I'm Philip Broadwith, Chemistry World's Business Editor. This is our second webinar in partnership with Commonwealth Chemistry, the Federation of Chemical Societies representing the chemical sciences community from across the 54 Commonwealth countries. Just a few kind of housekeeping bits before we get going. We're using the GoToWebinar platform today, as you've probably noticed on the way in. For those of you who haven't used it before, it's an interactive platform, and that's the main reason why we do it. It gives you a great opportunity to ask questions to all of our speakers during the webinar live at any point. There's a box near the bottom of the GoToWebinar panel. By default, that's usually on the right-hand side of your screen. At any time, you can type in a question and that will go to our panels to the question and answer session at the end. But please don't wait until the end of the session to type in your question. The earlier you can get those in, the better we can see them and see and work out which questions we can going to get to in which order at the end. And if you'd like your question to be addressed particularly to any one of the speakers, do just mention it when you're typing in your question. You can also move around the various elements of the display to make them how you feel the most comfortable. A lot of our speakers, while they do have a few slides today, it's more really about what they're saying. So you may want to try and make their webcams a little bit bigger. Just play around, make sure that you've got yourself the most comfortable viewing experience. And the whole webinar is being recorded today. So if you do miss any part of it, or you just want to watch it back again in your own time to pick up on the details or some links or some of the resources we're sending out, then you'll get a link to the recording in a few days' time on the email that you used to register. To say thank you to everyone who's attended the webinar live, you'll also get a certificate of attendance in that same email. So today's webinar is about the challenges of taking new chemical technology and creating commercial products from it. So new chemistry products are going to be vitally important to solving all sorts of global issues, everything from climate change and sustainability to health and protecting the environment. But getting those products into the marketplace successfully involves an awful lot of challenges. Yes, some of those challenges relate to the technology and the science itself, but there's a whole other set of challenges involved in the process of commercialization, of taking what is a brilliant piece of chemistry and turning it into a product that you can successfully sell or distribute. Today's speakers have a host of different experiences through large and small companies, having started up their own companies, brokering partnerships between academia and industry, seeing multiple products through to successful launches. Each of them is going to give a short presentation, and then we'll hopefully have about 40 minutes or so for questions at the end. And that, I think, is where we're going to get the most value out of this. So please do submit your questions. Thank you to those of you who have submitted questions as part of the registration process. We've got a few of those lined up for later, but do continue throughout the webinar as to submit questions on topics as they come up, as widely as you like on any aspect of what we're talking about. So later on, we're going to be hearing from Zhongxin Zhu, who is currently the president of the Canadian Chemical Society, or Canadian Society for Chemistry. He's also the head of process development and manufacturing at pharmaceutical firm Gilead, based in Edmonton. Zhongxin has a wealth of experience in pharmaceuticals. He's been part of teams that have supported about 25 different drug launches, and he's worked with both startups and with established companies. So he's seeing this from a variety of different angles. We'll also hear from Kylie Vincent, who began her career in Australia, but is now a professor of inorganic chemistry at the University of Oxford in the UK. She began her journey commercializing biological redox catalysts to support chemical manufacturing a number of years ago, and her company Hydrogen span out from the University of Oxford last year. Kylie's won numerous awards along the way and was recently made Oxford's academic champion for women in entrepreneurship. Also delighted to welcome Sophia Khan, who's an associate professor at Banastali Vidyapat University in India. She founded Drumlin's Water Technology to commercialize some chemistry that she'd worked on for removing excess fluoride from water, which is a massive problem in various communities across India and throughout the rest of the world. She's won various national and international awards and is extremely passionate about supporting women in both education and entrepreneurship. But our first speaker, and I will invite him to turn his camera on in just a second, is Kelly Chibali. Kelly is a professor of organic chemistry from the University of Cape Town in South Africa. He's also the founder and director of the H3D Drug Discovery and Development Center within that university. He has a wealth of experience in various aspects of drug development process, as well as in forging partnerships between academic and industrial researchers to take those molecules further into clinical development. He was one of the Fortune magazine's 50 greatest leaders in 2018, and in 2019 was one of New African magazine's 100 most influential Africans. So over to you, Kelly.
Thank you very much, Philip. That very kind introduction. I hope that my slides are visible to the audience, and thank you very much to the audience for participating in this webinar. So what I'd like to do before I address the couple of topics that I would like to address, firstly, looking at the role and the importance of institutes like our Drug Discovery Center in terms of delivering research to address global challenges in health. And then secondly, to talk about how we can bring together international partnerships to solve these global challenges. All right, so this is the only slide that I'm going to share with you before I go back and talk to the couple of issues that I wanted to talk to. And that is just for me to introduce to you the University of Cape Town holistic. The H in the H3D stands for holistic drug discovery and development. So the 3 Ds, the first D is for drug, the second D is for discovery, and the third D is for development. So just a bit of background. The business plan was developed and approved in 2010, and then H3D became a University of Cape Town accredited research center. But officially, the programs, we really just got going with the programs in April of 2011. So we've really just been just over a decade in the game. We've grown. Back in 2011, I had 5 postdoctoral fellows starting out in the center. We now have more than 65 staff members completely dedicated to drug discovery. And in addition, I have my academic group, which is also somewhat embedded within the Drug Discovery Center. So we've grown this organization to more than 85 people in the last decade or so. And as you see at the top of the slide are the technology platforms that we've established broadly in chemistry, in disease biology, and again, you see the diseases that are captured there reflecting really interest in infectious disease at this point in time. But as well as the enzymology platforms to support target-based drug discovery programs, and then much more recently initiated a program in antimicrobial resistance. And this is, of course, really dealing with antibiotic resistant microbes, which is a much more recent program here. And we've been working in the TB space for a number of years. At the very bottom of the slide, you will see the DMPK, which is your drug metabolism and pharmacokinetics platform. That really completes the suite of the platforms that allow us to take projects from the lab to the clinic. So that's what we've established by way of platforms to facilitate early stage drug discovery. We, in the course of the last 10 years, established drug discovery programs in 4 main infectious diseases. First one was malaria, then tuberculosis, TB, then, as I mentioned, antimicrobial resistance, and as of this year, which is not reflected on this slide, is a project on COVID-19, where we're using artificial intelligence and developing machine learning models to repurpose drugs from our collection of small molecule libraries that we've assembled over the last 10 years. We, of course, when you talk about drug discovery, what is a successful drug discovery project? It is one that delivers a compound that is both efficacious, does the job it's meant to do, but is also safe. So that's the definition of a successful drug discovery project. And we've been successful in one particular programs where we took a project from the lab through a network of partnerships, which I'll come back to a little bit later, into phase 1 human trials, and eventually proceeded into phase 2. We also learned how to build a backup program. Very important, because there is no guarantee that what you have delivered into the clinic will actually be successful. And I'm sure you'll hear about this from one of my colleagues are speaking a little bit later from Gilead. So we've learned also how to develop backup programs from the lessons learned from the program that has gone to the clinic. And as I'll come back to speak about this later, we've also assembled a global network of research partners and funders to allow us to do this work. So I'll stop sharing this slide and come back to talk about the two topics that I was asked to speak about. So the first one is, what is the role and importance of centers like H3D, which are embedded within an academic environment, but doing drug discovery as it is done in the innovative pharmaceutical industry or a biotech? Very clearly, from what I showed you earlier, from the platforms that we've put together across chemistry, biology, and pharmacology, that one important role that a center like ours can play in addressing global challenges in terms of addressing the unmet medical needs is providing the required infrastructure, providing the required technologies, and providing the required critical mass of talent in the disciplines that are required to prosecute a drug discovery project. And importantly as well, to be able to provide an absorptive capacity to be able to attract talent and retain that talent as we tackle these global health challenges. So that's the role and importance of centers like H3D embedded within a university environment, and how that can be deployed to addressing global challenges. The second point is, in my very last point on the slide I showed you to introduce H3D in a very summarized way, was I made reference to the global network of partners and funders that we've assembled over the last 10 years or so. So in other words, how do you do this? How do you build a network of research partners and funders? You know, we are in the COVID-19 pandemic, and COVID-19 has actually provided a blueprint of how this can be done. If I was speaking in 2019, you know, I probably will say something that may not be impactful, but there's no better time than to illustrate the importance of having networks of partnerships. So how do you do this? It's working on a globally aligned project in global health, like COVID-19 has shown us, but requiring a network of partners to tackle the challenges, a network of partners so that we can collectively share the risks and collectively share the benefits. And of course, these networks of partnerships involve not just academia, as we are at H3D at the University of Cape Town, but also the private sector as industry, philanthropic entities, not-for-profit virtual research and development organizations, etc., etc. But what we have in common, apart from the globally aligned project, is that we have shared interests. We have shared goals. As I said earlier, COVID-19 has provided a blueprint of how this can be done. And I'm just going to exemplify this, which is exactly the model that we have used and the partners that we have. I will give you just two examples, both involving the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, there, of course, on one hand, an unprecedented level of collaboration to develop vaccines in record time. But about the same time, there was also an initiative by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to launch the COVID-19 Therapeutics Accelerator. And of course, they committed some funding to that effort. And soon after, we saw a response from a variety of governments, additional philanthropies, and even individuals that would not ordinarily support infectious disease research. So that is one example of what is possible when funders from both the private sector and the public sector come together. The second example I can give you, again involving the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'm talking about networks of partnerships involving academia, industry, and governments. Was actually a partnership that was announced between the Gates Foundation and about 15 pharmaceutical companies who were making available their expertise and platforms to address the issue of COVID-19 therapeutics. To wrap up, the question is, what's in it for each partner? What is the business case? So when you talk about a partnership, what does each partner bring to the table? Apart from having mutual interest or shared goals, what's in it for each partner? So for academia, obviously, amongst other things, academia is there to generate knowledge and produce research outputs. But for universities as well, this kind of thing provides an opportunity to translate the research that happens in academic institutions, find a mechanism to not just practice inventions, but also innovation. And that is something that is facilitated when you have industry involvement in this. What about industry? Industry, what's in it for the industry? What's in it for the philanthropic organization? Of course, they are looking for solutions to problems. They're looking for an opportunity for new knowledge to be applied to solving those problems. And of course, the exchange of ideas and information and knowledge between academia and industry is mutually beneficial, especially if it's done in a pre-competitive space. And then finally, the role of government is really to make things happen because they have a mandate from the electorate. Thank you very much. Back to you, Philip.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kelly. I think that's a great way to start off. That really kind of sets the scene quite nicely. So thanks very much, Kelly. Just a reminder, you will be able to ask questions on anything that Kelly's been talking about or any of our speakers later in the thing. I'll ask Kelly to turn off his camera and I'll just welcome our next speaker, who is Sophia Khan. So I'll just ask Sophia to turn on her webcam and get her presentation ready. She's going to share with us some of her experience of setting up Drumlin's water technologies in India and the importance of supporting and nurturing women scientists to become entrepreneurs. So over to you, Sophia. I think we can see you quite nicely, and I think we can hear you as well.
Yeah, thank you, Phillips, for your nice introduction, and greetings to each and everyone, and who are and passionate listener also of the today's talk. So I'm absolutely honored and delighted to share my own journey from the water research labs to the Drumlins Water Technologies Private Limited at this prestigious Commonwealth Chemistry seminar. So I would like to give a sense throughout my journey what problems I have faced, what failures and what successes I like taste during the whole journey. So let's begin with this. So Dumlins Water Technologies is an spin-out company from my own established research Center for Excellence Water and Energy, and we are working on the development of the affordable defluoridation technology. So this is the story of 17 and 18 years. This is the story of all the failures, frustrations, triumphs, and successes. And it is the story of the woman scientist and the woman scientist to become an entrepreneur, a path which is less traveled, a new way to go. Why I said this? Because this spin-out company is situated in the Banasli Vidyapith University. This is the world largest residential women university, and it trains the women in every sphere of the life. So this is the unique in that sense. So from this slide, I would like to take you 17 years back when I started my career at this campus. So what I have observed in the near surroundings, that most of the this university has situated in the fluoride endemic zone. So I have observed in the surrounding area that lots of the young people has to go through the knee replacement and the knee replacement before the age of 40 and suffered from the dental and the skeletal fluorosis. And my own daughter Sami has also suffered from the dental fluorosis, despite of we have an RO system from day one when she was born. So I took as a research problem a way back, and what I have seen that fluoride is not a local problem; it is a global problem now. Globally, around 200 million people, and in India, around 66 million people severely suffered from the problem of fluoride contamination. And this place where I belong, that more than 45 lakh people severely suffered from the problem of fluoride fluorosis and the fluoride problem. So what is the problem that could not been solved by the could not been solved till date, despite of so many of the government efforts and many technologies, membrane filtration technologies, and all kind of advanced technologies were available. So I did a lot of basic research. Then in the coming slides, I will share with you. So in before like 10 years before, when I started to establish my own lab, despite of that I have trained as a molecular biologist, I had trained in a different area. I took a different path because I want to solve this problem because it's my calling. And that was like in my that was my dream, that one day I would like to bring as a scientist, as a teacher, or as an scientist to solve the problem of the local people and the fluoride contamination, and bring a very simple solution. Science needs very simple solution that do not require any complex technical manuals for the operations, and that also do not require water and electricity for the operations. From the day one from my research, that I want that my research should be sustainable, that do not release the brine in the environment or release any other further contaminants in the environment. And all the research, it was in my mind to develop anything that should be very simple, economical, and greener. So still yet that water and energy are the two main crises, and world is still looking for the simple, greener, economical, and sustainable solutions, and water is the main SDG goal. So we started, and during the whole course of my journey, I found so many of things. So by luckily I got like established Center for Excellence on Water and Energy, and I got several projects, and recently I'm running the Water Innovation Center and the Biotechnology Ignition grants. So the problems with the existing technology, with the many technologies like reverse osmosis, ion exchange, or other type of technology, either they are very costly or complex, or could not been able to remove fluoride at the satisfactory level. So what is the problem with the existing technologies? Like fluoride is a double-edged sword. It is required for your body at like 1.5 mg per liter, and its excess amount is toxic. So there is no technology available in the world that can maintain the level of the fluorides, and fluorides varies from one place to another. In 100-meter differences, the level of the fluoride changes. So we have to work hard, and we need a localized and very one-sided approach only for this ion, for the like water purification system. So being as a scientist, I observe the nature, and I find that if there is a problem in the nature, we the problems or solutions are also in the nature. So I took the bio inspired or the nature based solutions for the removal of the fluoride contamination. So we have initiated our water research in three areas, like development of the nanoadsorbent sensors, and development of the nanophytoimitation technologies, and using and see the effects of the nanoparticles on the plants, or effects of the toxicity of the nanoparticles. And luckily I could say that we have like patented all this, and we have that all these technologies has been like at the commercial stage. So way back we have started with the phytoremediation. Chemistry is the heart of anything else, and here I would like to comment on one thing, like being as a chemist, if you are an expert in the chemistry, and if you want to solve the problem which is very like global, and you have chosen one problem, then you need a multidisciplinary approach for that solution. And this is the high need of an art, to make the like collaborations with the different expertise, and you have to develop the different skill sets. So we way back we have started our work in the phytoremediations that uses the uses the plants for the removal of the pollutants from the contaminated soil. But it like this technology suffered from like it's a slow process. So we have used like plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, chelating agent, nanoparticles, and now we are using the hydrogels for the improving the efficiency. We have done a lot of work in the mapping of the fluoride endemic area, and lots of work has been done in this fluoride endemic zones to see the levels of the fluoride not only in the soils, water, but in the vegetations too. We have worked on the different nanoabsorbents, and we have selected the one model organism like Prosopis julirifera, which is a which is a green solution for the fluoride contamination. And we clubbed with how we could improve that. We worked on the genetics of the hyperaccumulation. So we addressed the basic science questions like how to improve the heavy removal efficiency and speed up the process. Is the microbe or nanoparticle or the materials affect the plant biomass growth parameters, and how to make this process sustainable and cheaper. So we have started work on the green synthesis of the nanoparticle, nanomaterials, and see the effects on the plant system. And we have published the like in the basic sciences, we can say. So this paper has been this is also the we have seen the copper, ACF, and the CNF effects on the plants, and we found it's very encouraging results. And that information we have used in the upgradation of the phytoremediation efficiency, and we have published this the environmental science nano. So continuously we have worked hard for the sustainability. Like this paper has been some like work for the getting the achievements in the sustainability. And this paper we have published for improving the fluoride removal efficiency. So always said that the great ideas struck while you are in the corridor or while you are taking the tea. So one research scholar came at one time and said that, ma'am, we are facing a lot of problem in the chelation, like leaching of the nanoparticles. So that tea bags is in front of me, and I have said to my research scholar that can we use this tea bags kind of approaches for the removal of the fluoride. And that idea struck so well. So we have developed a tea bags like pouches for the removal of the fluoride from water and tea. We have published in the scientific reports, and this idea catches wide attention from the media also. So the vast up to this, like this is the basic research I did so far. So why I established the Dumblins Water Technologies Private Limited? So there are two things. That the one thing that I would like to bring the changes in my near society, that I want, that being as a scientist, how can I uplift the life of the nearby people. And the second most important thing during the this journey, what I found being is nurturing the women scientist in the university. What I have found that many women scientists cannot go outside for carrying out their postdocs due to their families and the kids, and their husbands are working in the different cities and all kind of things. And many of the postdocs are also not been able to get their good jobs just after their PhD. So one student came to me and ma'am, what should I do now? So that idea struck me, that why I should not commercialize. This is a very good potential. This is a huge potential, and if I can create the employment for the women scientists, that would be a great idea. So this two motivation leads to me to the beginning or to for the establishment of the Drumlins Water Technologies Private Limited. But this is not an easy case. Like we whole transition from a scientist and teacher to the founder of and director of the Drumlins Water Technology. At that time I do not know about that, how will I proceed. I do not know about the businesses. In my university there is no role model, no faculty entrepreneurship, and the innovation policies were there. But in the name of God I started. So I would like to tell all of you, there are different skill sets that you need. If you have a good desire and good will to do the good things in your life, God helps you in the several manners. And what skill sets you need? You need a different approach of businesses, because what I have faced, you need to develop an skill to write the business proposals. So my first business proposal has been selected after 3 rejections. So I was successful in getting the scientific grants, many in crores of funding, but my business aptitude and how I can go further, so that was the real challenge for me. And second is the legal complications that associate with any company. First I founded is as a partnership firm, and then I have realized that it will not work. So I have converted into the private limited company. So whole this process of the journey give me a complementary set of skills, and I can say that if you want to be a successful as an entrepreneur, your whole journey of a scientist will not give you a successful taste of an entrepreneur. You need the complementary skill sets. So here I would like to tell who are listening to me, everybody who want to convert their lab technologies to the commercialization and now wants to open the spin out companies. uh, there is a need to see yourself. Are there we could see there is an breakthrough in the research that you got. And second, you have to develop at your own research labs. You have to see that what skill sets you can develop from day one. So we worked out on what I find, that you need the diverse people, diverse skill set, and the skills to maintain the diverse people, because everybody has a different taste and different languages. Suppose I have to talk to the investor, I have to talk to in their languages. If I have to talk to the scientists, I have to talk in different languages. So this transition was very tough, and everybody who would like to go through this has to go these kind of challenges and failures in your path. But please be determined to stick on that. If we worked hard, we will find the way. This is the story and the gist of me. So we have come out within a smart universal defluoridation nano rod equipped with the sensor. And this technology is a membrane free, do not require water and electricity for the operations. It is reusable, light, and scalable up to the community level, and we can place in the 300 or 500 liters tank. We are constantly working on the regeneration aspects and working hard for the product development, and my team is working hard to for upgrading the technology readiness level from the 5 to 6. And we are updating this or validating our product in the surrounding area or by the third party. We in the commercialization journey, we are at this stage that we are now getting the in the process of the Bureau of International Certification, BIS standards, or ISO certifications. So we have incepted this company in the year 2000. And please minus the 2 years of the COVID, which is very very hell for us. We can't do anything, but the progress we have achieved so far is so many, and it's still miles to go. So we have bagged so many awards during my journey, that big grantee that we got the 50 lakhs, and we got the DST Idea Innovation Grant, and Drumlins is the consortium partner of it. And the recently we got for the commercialization, or for like successful commercialization, we got the Reliance Platinum Jubilee Award. This is has been given by the National Academy of Sciences. And here I would like to tell that I have raised 10 million INR for my company, and I would like to tell that this was not so easy. So first 10 INR develop was a like breakthrough in my life, and it gives them a lot of learning to me, like how could what skill sets you need to handle the business grants. So there are two different things: commercialization grants and scientific and basic research grants. But for handling the business grant, you needed different skill sets, and you are in the process of the growing. So in this manner, like we are at the angel and the VC investors, up to this level we are at this stage. So our story has been released by the Honorable Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, and the by the Niti Aayog. So my whole journey from this to that, and still we are in the process. And by year 2022, like we will be able to launch our product, and we will be soon open our manufacturing unit also. So all this journey has given me an opportunity for growth, and it gives me a lot of satisfaction when I look back, and when I have seen that what I thought I became in my life, and I am just following the purpose of my life. Or although the path has several failures, several hurdles of the funding, lots of problems I have faced, like retaining the good talents at the small startup on a spin out company. I have faced like the females, to work with the females, because female has a lot of problems. They has to like take care of their families and kids, and has to go to the another city and all kind of things. And you have to work with them, because this company has a whole female founders, two female founders, and all the employees, especially like most of the employees, 80% employees are women. So I have to tackle the problem of the women, and I have seen the problems and challenges faced by the women. The good thing is that during the whole course, I have designed, I have overcome the things, and I inspire the women to go through to solve the problems one by one. So in this manner, my whole journey gives me a lot of satisfaction, and the miles to go now from this onward. Also, there are lots of opportunities in front of me. So if I look back, or I see my present, so being as a scientist, it helps in the entrepreneurship, and being as an entrepreneurship is also helps to write the scientific fundies. And you have to the entrepreneurship gives an gives an like a skill to see the things from the top bird's eye point of view. You can see the things from out, from the sky. So you can easily handle the problems, and easily see the pictures in a bigger form. So that's the main advantage I got through this. And both these skill sets, like as a teacher, as a entrepreneur, and as a scientist, it helps me to grow in a better manner. And like I am contributing, and I'm on the path of contributing to the society. So this is the story of me. So I would like to share the in the last, like I belong to the water group and water research lab and water company also. So I take so much of inspiration from the water. So water is an hidden treasure. So it flows. I would like to share my own poem. In flows, it follows the path which is unexplored. In hurdles, it finds its own way. In pieces, it stays grounded. In being, it follows to depth. In confrontation, it stays gentle. In actions, it aligns to the timing. In every circumstances, it flows. In drop, inner is magnificent. In every drop, hidden treasure lies. And in beauty, it is flexible. And in distress, it is still humble. And in meeting with the ocean, it teaches you and me that we are nothing but the same. So be like water in life, humble, flexible, and be with the continuous flow. So all of the people who are listening to me, I would like to say one thing. So the size of the success is measured by the strength of your desire. that how you handle the disappointments and the failures along the way. This is the most important thing I have learned in my life. If you can handle the failures and anything in your way, because your purpose is so big, then nothing is impossible for you. So be like the water. Thank you so much for for patient hearing. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Sophia. That's a very inspiring story, and I'm sure we can come back to some of those topics that you touched on in the question and answer session a bit later. So just a reminder, do continue to submit your questions during the talks. I know it can be tricky to concentrate on the speakers at the same time, but do take that opportunity. We do have plenty of time for questions at the end. Okay, so thanks, Sophia. I'll just ask you to turn your video off now, and we'll go over to Kylie Vincent. So Kylie, I'll just ask you to turn your camera on now. So Kylie is going to give us a bit of some perspectives from her journey with hydrogen and what it means, and also some about what it means to champion women in entrepreneurship through her new role at the university. Thanks, Kylie.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the science behind the technology that we've commercialized or taking through to commercialization, and sort of weave that commercialization journey through the development of the science to give you a sense of how that's happened, but also to talk to you a little bit at the end about this new role that Oxford University has created as academic champion for women in entrepreneurship. So my interests in chemistry were very much on the interface between chemistry and biology, and I've had a very long-standing interest in the hydrogenase enzymes, which are nature's solution to activation of hydrogen, and they use either iron or nickel ion catalytic centers to be able to split hydrogen apart into positive protons and negative electrons. And in some cases, they can work in both directions and form hydrogen gas. In other cases, their main role in biology is to extract energy from hydrogen. On the other hand, as chemists, we would normally think about hydrogen activation relying on precious metals, whether that's the conversion of chemical to electrical energy in fuel cells, where we might use platinum nanoparticles as the catalysts, or whether it's the addition of hydrogen across unsaturated bonds in chemical synthesis, where again, we would tend to use precious metal catalysts, either heterogeneous or homogeneous, for those reactions. And there's been a lot of interest in hydrogen and more sustainable ways of doing chemistry. The addition of hydrogen across double bonds accounts for around 10 to 20% of all industrial chemical steps. So this is a really important transformation in industrial chemistry, in the manufacturing of chemicals. And often the metal catalysts used for these reactions require high or moderate pressures and temperatures to drive the reactions. And there are also concerns, of course, with the precious metals used as catalysts for these reactions being of limited availability and also leaching into the chemical products. On the other hand, nature has another suite of possibilities for reduction of double bonds, not via addition of hydrogen, but via a hydride transfer to reduce a double bond, and often making very, very chiral selective products, so making a single enantiomer of the chemical product. And that's not escaped notice in the chemical industry, so many pharmaceutical companies and other fine chemical manufacturing companies are already making big use of enzymes for carrying out these sorts of chemical transformations. But most of these reactions in industry are driven by glucose, with effectively a single hydrogen atom removed off glucose and the rest of the molecule thrown away or burnt at the end of the reaction, with glucose simply acting as a sacrificial hydride transfer agent. And we started to think whether we could make use of our fundamental understanding of hydrogen in biology to bring together these ideas and take the best of both worlds. So the cleanness of hydrogenation reactions, where you're simply adding two hydrogen atoms across a chemical bond, but with the selectivity and efficiency and precision of the biological catalysts. And to cut what's been quite a long story short, we developed a heterogeneous biocatalytic system for this. And this was really the work of a very bright and talented master's student in my group, Holly Reeve, who's gone on to have a very important journey through this technology, as I'll explain in a moment. So what we did was to take a hydrogenase enzyme that I introduced to you earlier and attach it onto carbon beads together with another enzyme that can reduce a biological hydride transfer cofactor, NADH, and attach onto that a third enzyme, which could be any commercial enzyme that's used for reduction of a double bond that requires NADH as the hydride transfer agent. And so with that, we were able to develop a heterogeneous biocatalytic system that really looked very much like a metal on carbon catalyst, but actually made use of biocatalytic precision. And with that, we were able to obtain very high rates of conversion of starting material to product, but also retaining that very high enantiomeric excess, the chiral purity of the product. And that was the start of a long journey for us into the biotechnology area, but also towards commercialization. And a really important step on that journey was winning a competition aimed to recognize emerging technologies. And because it turned out that one of the judges from that competition became an important mentor to us along the way and has stayed with us and actually ended up as the chair of the board of our company. But also we made some important industrial contacts then, which allowed us to start testing out these ideas with industrial partners, and where we could see what some of the challenges really were in industrial chemistry. And I think that's one of the challenges as you think about translating academic chemistry through to commercially relevant applications. It's often quite difficult to know what the challenges really are in industry, because you don't see academic papers on that. It's often difficult to access that information. And so it's only been through hundreds of conversations with industrial partners that we've been able to start to understand how this technology might address some of the key challenges that are faced in industrial chemical manufacturing. So at this point, we were at a fairly critical stage with the technology. It's often talked about a valley of death for early stage technologies, where they're sort of too academic or at too low a technology readiness level to leave the university, but not quite ready to get commercial funding or external investment. And we were lucky at this point to secure a large grant from a number of the UK research councils who'd grouped together to try and help biotechnologies through this so-called valley of death, to help develop them a bit further within a university context before they were ready to go out into a spin-out company or a licensing venture. And for us, that was really important, because I think if we'd spun out sort of 5 or 6 years ago, at this point, we were really too early. We didn't really know the market well enough. We hadn't de-risked the technology enough, and we didn't quite know what it could do at that point. So we were lucky to secure this a 5-year grant that allowed us to, within the academic environment, really de-risk the technology, but also explore a lot of other directions for how it could be used. And this slide just shows some of the examples of reactions that we were able to carry out with our biocatalytic hydrogenation beads. And as an academic, for me, this was an interesting journey. I was worried that it might get a bit boring for an academic who'd been used to very fundamental science, and that I might sort of lose interest if we were just taking it towards commercialization. But actually, many, many interesting academic directions arose. And one of those was our realization that we could run these reactions in heavy water, in D2O, in deuterated water, and that would result in installing the deuterium atom as a deuteride, a hydride equivalent, onto the biological cofactor, which then would be transferred onto a very, very selective position on the final product that we were making. And we demonstrated that again for a range of different reactions where we were installing deuterium into very selective positions. So we were very excited about that. It led to some new academic collaborations. And initially, it seemed to us that this might be the initial route to market. And so we started exploring with potential end users of this deuteration technology whether people were interested in this. It has applications in cases where you want to have a heavy version of a molecule, perhaps for protein NMR analysis, for mass spec analysis, but also in pharmaceutical chemistry, where increasingly deuteration is being used to help stabilize positions on molecules against metabolic breakdown or racemization, and also sometimes to get around conventional patents on the non-deuterated analogues. So we started to explore whether that was a route to market. And at this point, Holly Reeve, who'd been the original master's student who developed this technology, she was accepted onto a program called iCure in the UK that was intended to sort of send her off to have 100 conversations with potential end users or people along the value chain of the technology who might be able to give an opinion on how we should take this technology forward. And it was about that time that COVID hit, and so a lot of those conversations she had were virtual conversations, but that probably actually helped that she was able to have a huge number of conversations with companies all around the world to try and assess whether this deuteration strategy might be a viable route to market. And actually that resulted in a very significant pivot in what we were going to try and take to market, because we realized that what people were particularly interested in were the sustainability benefits of driving reactions with hydrogen gas. And this really played into the current landscape around cleaning up chemical manufacturing, decarbonizing chemical manufacturing, using hydrogen gas as a very clean, atom efficient way of driving chemistry. And it also, of course, plays into the growth of hydrogen as a clean fuel and the new initiatives for big large-scale electrolysis plants for production of hydrogen from renewable energy sources. And so what we've ended up taking as our goal for sort of near-term products that the company will take towards market are actually both batch and continuous flow approaches for simply running reactions under hydrogen gas to clean up the way that biocatalysis is done, or to replace precious metal hydrogenation reactions with biocatalytic hydrogenation reactions. And this seems to really play into the current high level of interest in more sustainable ways of doing chemical manufacturing. And I think that's something to think about if you're taking a technology towards market. How does it play into current market drivers and the current landscape of what sort of driving both the economics but also social and ethical considerations within the industrial area. So we spun out the company Hydrogen this year, and one of the things we're looking at doing is supplying little cartridges which could be slotted into standard hydrogenation reactors that people are already using in industry with metal catalysts, so that they barely need to know that they're using an enzyme. The company was founded by myself and Holly, who'd gone on from her initial work as a student on this to become project manager on a major project that we had sort of taking this towards market. And now she is CEO of the spin-out company. And Sarah Cleary on the left-hand side was a postdoc who'd been on this project and then went forward and is now the chief scientific officer in the spin-out company. So I've been able to stay in the university. I have a role as a non-executive director on the board of Hydrogen, the company, but I keep my academic role, and that's been great for me because we've got lots and lots of new ideas coming through the pipeline for how we can make use of biocatalysis in really creative ways to feed into new approaches in chemical manufacturing. So it's meant that I have some role within the spin-out, but also have been able to keep that academic research program going. So it's worked well for me that I've had a fantastic team working on this within my research group, some of whom were at a good career stage to be able to transfer over into the spin-out company. Another thing I think that's important in equipping academics to be able to take work towards commercialization is that sort of entrepreneurial training. And I had some courses in that during my postdoc years, which had really stayed with me, giving me sort of insight into what we might need to do to be able to know how to file patents and how to take work towards commercialization. But probably much more importantly, Holly did a lot of modules of MBA courses and various bits of business training alongside her PhD or DPhil in Oxford, and alongside her postdoc years and while she was working as a project manager on this. And so she'd really built up a very convincing portfolio of skills in commercial activities, business activities that she was able to use to show her credibility for moving into a role as CEO of the spin-out. Thinking towards diversity in entrepreneurship, of course, it's not only the founders where we need to think about diversity, but it's that whole ecosystem. And we started this company with 3 female co-founders, but very quickly we had investors come on board, and we've now sort of diluted the number of women on the board as we've brought investors on to the company board as well. And so I think if we're thinking about diversity in entrepreneurship, we really need to think about that at all levels, the whole sort of ecosystem that surrounds it, the investors, the potential CEOs, the potential chairs for boards, potential board members that we bring in, as well as the actual innovators who are doing the science in academia and taking that forward towards commercialization. So from the point of view of hydrogen, the spin-out company, what we're really promoting is the idea that this is a technology that allows biocatalysis to offer something in chemical manufacturing right across the scale, from companies that have very little or no experience of using biocatalysis at the moment, where they can make use of our heterogeneous immobilized biocatalyst systems in much the same way that they've been using metal catalysts, right through to much more to companies where biocatalysis is much more established, but they're looking for cleaner ways of getting away from the carbon-based, glucose-based ways of driving biocatalysis to much cleaner ways with less waste, less complicated systems, and moving into continuous manufacturing, which is enabled by the fact that we've got enzymes immobilized on carbon supports. So we are really interested in sort of looking at who might be able to take up these kind of technologies, and so far things have gone well in the level of interest we've had in the spin-out company, the rounds of investment, and the R&D that's going on in the company. So finally, just to finish with a comment on this role as academic champion for women in entrepreneurship. Oxford University set up this role at the beginning of this year, recognizing that we really need to promote underrepresented groups in entrepreneurial activities. And although there's been very good success in bringing much more diversity into increasingly senior academic appointments, we still have a real lack of diversity in entrepreneurship amongst the founders and co-founders of our spin-out companies, for example. And in fact, we've actually got very little data so far on diversity in those in the spin-outs and social enterprise ventures coming out of the university. And so one of the challenges here is actually how we go about gathering that diversity data and setting targets for where we want to get to with diversity in entrepreneurship. The focus on women in entrepreneurship really recognizes that we still have a long way to go, despite the fact that we're bringing many more women now into senior academic appointments. That's still not yet being reflected in the number of women as founders and co-founders of companies coming out of the university. But we're, of course, interested in diversity much more broadly and are looking at many areas in ways that we can bring underrepresented groups into entrepreneurship. There's strong evidence that increasing diversity on boards has a really positive effect on the success of companies, bringing much more creative thinking, different approaches to risk taking, for example. So there's clear benefits in promoting diversity. And to be able to do that, we need to look at that whole pipeline right through from exciting early career researchers in universities, both at sort of graduate student level, but also early career postdoc level, exciting them about entrepreneurship and the possibilities of careers in that sort of area, but also training to de-jargonize this whole sort of what can seem like quite an alienating environment in the entrepreneurial world, and equipping them with the skills and the confidence to be able to take ideas forward. Participation of underrepresented groups is going to require us to sometimes just tap someone on the shoulder and say, why don't you have a go, apply for this, there's some funding that might be suitable for you there. And I think that sort of really targeted approach is going to be very important in bringing forward more underrepresented groups. So I think there's a very clear reason for why we need more diversity in entrepreneurship, and I think the future is really bright in terms of bringing on board new ways of thinking about entrepreneurship and how chemistry can be represented in that area. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kylie. Sorry about that. I was still on mute. Yes, you can't do a webinar without having one of these things go wrong. But anyway, so yes, a fantastic talk. And again, I think some really interesting things that we'll hopefully be able to come back to in the discussion at the end of the thing. So now it's time for us to move on to our final speaker, which is Jungshin Zhou from Gilead in Canada. I'll ask Jungshin to just get his video up, and he's going to come at this from a little bit more of a perspective of a slightly larger company. We're talking about some of the challenges of bringing medicines to market, including from regulatory, intellectual property and economic perspectives. So hopefully we can get Jungshin's presentation just up in a minute, and I'll just will encourage you to keep submitting your questions. I can see quite a few good questions coming in now, so we should be well started for the session later on. But please, if you've got any other things to ask, do submit them for any of our speakers. And I think we're more or less there ready with Jungshin now. So I will hand over to you, Jungshin.
Thank you, Philip, for the introduction, and thank you all, our first three speakers, has give us all fantastic stories about startup companies and our carry science into market. So I would talk about this from a biopharmaceutical perspective. So what it takes to take a molecule into market. So you have heard all the speakers talk about it. So in addition to the usual requirements for establishing a business, of course, you should have you need a product, and you need a good business plan, strategy, investment, and also understanding about your return on investment and resources, talents, and so on. And we needed to understand the pharmaceutical industry is very regulated, and in order to make a molecule become a therapeutic medicine, the first things we need to get is the approval of regulatory bodies before you can even think about your molecule can be used, your medicine can be used by public. So that is the first thing. So we need to keep our end game in mind before you start your business. So from that perspective, what the regulators are looking for. So they are looking for the evidence that the medicine you are putting into the market is potent, efficacious, and specific. That is the benefit outweigh the risk of your medicine and address unmet medical needs. As Kelly already talked about it, unmet medical need is very important for you be able to have a medicine get into the market. And the regulator are also looking for the evidence that the data you collected along the way are trustworthy and scientifically sound. You have to make sure you prove you have a product that is really, the data are really high quality. And the evidence that you can manufacture the product as well as the drug substances with consistent quality, and the manufacturing process are in excellent control. So that's the evidence they are looking for when you submit your product for approval. On the right-hand side of my screen, you can see there's a triangle to show what is composed in your submissions. We call a common technical document. Basically, with all the boxes there, there are three different types of data. First, your non-clinical study reports that including many things our first speaker mentioned about. It's your pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, toxicology information, and so on. That's all the data you collected during your preclinical study. And the clinical report, that is the data collected through your phase 1 through phase 3 clinical trials. And then the other module we call module 3, that is the quality, which contain chemical manufacturing and the control informations. That is the portion our chemists that you provide. So to have a good product and a high quality data in all the area only satisfy one portion of the need. So how the data is collected and the process you use to collect all the data another way are very important. I mean, that is often ignored or possibly not really handled well by startup companies. And I have seen many, many examples along the way through my different stage of my career. And so what in that doing, that is really showing the science, quality, and the compliance. The compliance is the portion we possibly short for many companies. And we can explore a bit further and about this information either during question or I can have talk about in the challenging sections. So all in all, the regulator are looking for you really can maintain the patient safety. That's the final target. So next I will give you a little bit idea what does it really take for you to take a molecule when you have an idea and you discover a molecule and you take to the market. So after you discover a molecule in academic lab or industry, so it's a long journey for you to take to commercial the product. In the first red box on the left hand corner there, that's most of academic lab or people want to start a business. It's the discovery and the preclinical stage. And that take a little bit while for you to really get all the data. You think you have a molecule that could have potential therapeutic benefit. And then you start thinking about a company. But after that, there's a long way to go. You get your phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials, and eventually application for marketing, get approval. And so this usually take about 5 to 15 years. So what you're trying to get it to answer all the questions on the bottom of the screen is the drug developable? Is the drug safe? Or is the drug efficacious and effective? That is really, you're trying to establish the target product profile. And that's all you need to prove to the world you have the right product for the right disease. And also from business perspective, even after you get the product, is that drug has a market. And sometimes you have a good product, if there's no demand or you cannot really address any unmet medical need, possibly is not that useful. So along the journey from the entire drug development process, our chemists really play a major role on the bottom half of the screen. So we are working on the active pharmaceutical ingredient to develop a process for making those molecules. In short, we call API or drug substances. And we provide those drug substances to the formulator that are the formulation development. And basically those are the work to provide the tablets, injectable, and so on. That are the form we see in the market for general public. So you're providing those things for the toxicological study and also clinical trials. So in the entire process, this is chemists, and also you have all the biologists, disease area specialists, pharmacokinetics, pharmacologists, and so on, even including engineers at all stages of the development. So there's a lot of people involved in that. For startups, in general, you don't have all the resources you need. So most likely you will rely on external CXOs, we call contract research organization or contract manufacturing organizations, that including toxicological labs, clinicians in various countries, various cities, and so on. So all those organizations you work with, they have to have good manufacturing practices, good laboratory practices, good clinical practices, and so on. We call GSKOs. Those are the things you need to look for to be the right partner for you to marketing or get the data for you for market your product. So what are the challenges? Trying to just lay out some things. It's not trying to scare people away from drug development. It is, but I just want to make sure we are aware along the way, and so you're not so disappointed, but just anticipate it take a long time. As I mentioned that at the beginning, it's about 5 to 15 years, depending on which disease area you are working at. And the costs are very high. And I've got some very cursory number here. The cost for develop a molecule into the market has been increased significantly from 1979, it's about $138 million on average, to about $1.3 to $2.8 billion in 2018. That is the normalized dollar to 2000 money. Okay, so it is expensive. And then also, there's one thing often people not realize, the attrition rate is very high, or you can say very low success rate. As long as you have those in mind, you know you are going to fare along the way for many molecules, so you can be focused to find the best molecule in your pipeline to get into the market. In general, that actually for chemists is a good thing, because in general, you make about 30,000 compounds. You have about 2,000 get into the preclinical stage, basically the animal test and so on. And among the 2,000, you have about 100 getting the first in human trial, basically the phase 1 study. And so on. At the end, you may get about 8 to 16 approval. Even you can see many compounds get through phase 3 trials, you might not be able to get into the market still. And many compounds, after you registered with different regulators, you still could potentially be rejected. For example, this year, there were 8 compounds rejected by the FDA or asking for more information. Sometimes when there's more information required, you may say, do I want to do a lot of phase 3 trials? Cost me $100, $200 million to do one trial. Is this worth it? So there's a lot of those kind of challenge you have to really weigh and think about it. So I just give you an example here. This is the collected on the last 70 years. On average, in the first up to 1990, it's about 20, 25 compounds per year got approved by FDA. This is very similar to the European country we call MAA by the European authority, EMA approval, because most approval in FDA are kind of in parallel with other countries. And then after 1990, you can see average about 30 per year. Think about how many companies today exist are developing innovative drugs. There's about 30 average every year. There's a few peak years. 1996 is about 59, and a year before it's about 53, and this year is about 50. So from the number you can see it is very difficult to get one molecule into the market. And a few challenges I want to mention here, since we're talking about startups, and the things is you need to have the right expertise within the organization first, and also work with the right external organizations, or you can say partners. That the partners has to have very good knowledge about what you are looking for, and with very good track record on quality, compliance, and so on. So that partner has to be really, really thinking the same things, keep the same goal in mind as your organization, even though they're in the service industry side. So in that things, we can talk about it more during the question and answer section if needed. Many startups actually failed on that. I've seen that in my former work. I worked with a lot of startup companies on carrying the drug for development, and I see many examples I still see today with the information they collected, it is not a good quality, or the traceability, the history of how the data was collected, or the processes the developer is not too standard. So that is an area I think is very, very important for startups to look for the right partners and the right people, right mindset organization to work with. And the last is the IP. IP, there's a lot of things. This is a topic you can talk for a long time, but IP is very important. Make sure you have your molecule belong to you. You have the patent for the molecules, and you have the patent for your manufacturing processes. You have patent for your formulations, your dosage form, and so on. So that is something that are experts in the field. And if you are not careful enough, you could really walk into an area people will come back to say you infringe other people's patents. And it's a very crowded space. And if you miss some claim, it could be really taken away by somebody else. If you overclaim, it's not good either. So there's a fine balance what you do with your compound patents and so on. Okay, I will stop here. So thank you very much. And I just give you a flavor what it takes to develop a molecule from start to finish.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Jung-Sin. So we're a little bit over where we hoped we would be. So we've probably got a slightly shorter time for questions, but I'll just invite all of the other speakers to turn back on their webcams, and we'll start with some of the questions. So just as while everyone's getting on, so I think the first question I'm going to ask is to Kelly. And you talked a little bit about how you measure success from in your presentation, Kelly. Can you give us a bit of an idea of what the critical success factors are when you're doing these kind of commercialization projects? Do you need to split it down into kind of long-term and short-term? How do you go about evaluating what success looks like? Kelly, I think you're still on mute there, sorry.
Yeah, I think I was unmuted remotely. Yeah, I was saying, of course, I was talking to myself all along. Yeah, no, thanks, Philip, for the question. Yeah, I was just began by saying that, you know, clearly from what I described, I haven't actually been involved in commercializing a product. However, for the kind of things that we do, and I think we just heard very nicely from our colleague, the last speaker, about just how long it takes, et cetera, et cetera. And we've only been in the game for 10 years. But the first point is this, before I get to the critical success factors, is that success, you've got to be able to define that for yourself, because when you define it, you're going to determine it. And I think it's a very important part of it. But for us, when I look back at, with the benefit of hindsight in the last 10 years, I think I can give you probably 10 things, but in the interest of time, I'll give you just three or four. Firstly, I think is the institutional support from within the University of Cape Town. Remember, doing drug discovery, this is a translational aspect. You know, we heard from Zungsi, we heard from Kylie. You know, you got to spin something out to do this. So the academic environment is one where you need to basically have systems that allow you to do this. So firstly, the institutional support from the University of Cape Town, the leadership that created an environment for us to flourish doing this work. Secondly, when we talk about government, we talk about politics and politicians. No, I think in this case, government support from the South African government was really critical in the underpinning infrastructure that allowed us to attract projects. And if I can just go on to the second point that's linked to the critical importance of government support, it is that in fact the South African government support allowed us to leverage funding from the other partners. In fact, I can give you many examples, but just one. So the grant that we have with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is leveraged on a one-to-one basis. So for every dollar we get from the Gates Foundation, we get $1 from the government of South Africa. So that is very powerful because, you know, we're saying, and our government is saying, we want to share in the risks, we want to share in the benefits. And then I think the other two quickly is again something I touched on in the presentation in response to one of the things that I had to speak to. It's a network of partnerships model, because what we had to do, we didn't have to worry about having everything in Cape Town when we started. It was about focusing on the project, and the project determined the kinds of partnerships that we needed. So all we had to do at the point of starting our center was do what we could do with what we have in our environment. The rest of the gaps were addressed by our partners because it was in their interest for us to be successful. So this was very critical to have this network of partnerships around prosecuting a project, focusing on what we could do, and then our partners helping us address the gaps. And then I think finally, we heard it from Dr. Zhu in the last presentation. It's having a clear vision of meeting unmet medical needs, to use science for development, to create jobs, provide a capacity to attract and retain talent. Because if we don't create jobs, why should anybody study science? So that was really important as well. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Kelly. And I think what you're saying there has a lot of parallels. I think we'll probably recognize that from all of the other speakers in there, you know, that you've kind of given a microcosm from your own experience, but all of those factors that you're talking about are applicable across everybody's efforts to try and do these. It's about having having those clear goals, having a good understanding of what you're trying to get out of these things as we go. Okay, so the next question, I think we'll go to Kylie first. We talked a little bit about, can you give us a little bit of an idea of some of the skills and knowledge that are required to start a business that are different from what you're used to in terms of academic, in terms of starting in terms of developing the science? And how do you decide, I mean, you talked about having mentors and whatever, how do you decide whether to try and learn that yourself? Sophia will probably come to you a bit later on some of that, or to bring in expertise from externally?
Yeah, I think that those are all difficult questions. I think one of the really big changes in mindset is around the target focused R&D sort of work that you're doing, and that's been a transition in my group from sort of before we started thinking towards spin out, and then after we took on funding that was aimed at sort of taking the research towards spin out, that we started becoming much more focused on targets. So, you know, we're trying to hit a certain grams of product that we'll make overnight. We're trying to hit a certain catalyst loading. We're trying to hit a certain longevity for the catalyst. And those are the sorts of things that in a more purely academic context, you tend not to set those kind of targets. You tend to just sort of wander around in the research and find what's interesting and follow up whatever's interesting. And so I think that was a really big change of mindset. And I guess it worked quite well for us because we had some quite targeted funding that was designed towards translation of the research, that it helped us gradually get into that mindset. But that was a skill that Holly Reeve, the former student and then postdoc in my team, had brought to that, as she was a brilliant project manager in helping us to be really target focused on that. And I think some of the project management training that she'd been on had helped her be able to do some of that. So I think that's probably one of the big changes in mindset in going from the academic research to the more target driven research. But also focusing on what really are the problems in industrial chemistry. So what are the problems in industry that this technology can address? And again, from an academic perspective, we tend to follow up things because they're interesting to follow up, because it's an exciting research idea, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's solving anybody's challenge. And I think that's actually, it's been a real benefit to bring that way of thinking to my group, because we've kept our interest in really fundamental chemistry, but alongside that we've been able to spot the challenges that it might address along the way. So I think those are probably the big things that I've seen.
Great, and thanks. And Sophia, you kind of mentioned that you've been on a journey to, you know, learning a lot of this kind of stuff yourself. You mentioned learning the different languages that are kind of for investors and whatever. We had a question from one of the audience members about that. How did you approach learning all those different languages?
So yeah, it's I got luckily I got mentoring support, and I got business partners and business people who gives the guidance and advices during the whole journey. So being as a professor, firstly I hesitate to participate in all these type of small workshop seminars and try to interact and approach the different investors and the business partners. During the whole journey of me, what I find that if you like proactive and removes your hesitation to go to the investors, go to the business partner, because you are a scientist and your periphery is like you have to talk with the academic people only. But when you approach the business people and take their own perspective, and when you read a lot about what is the term sheets, and you read about the valuations of the company, and when you read the language of whole the business things, then it would be very good thing for learning itself. And in my own experience, what I have seen, like for a successful entrepreneur and a spin out company, there are three main bases. One is like one expert, one founder could be a very good technology partner, and one complementary should be the come from the business background or completely have a knowledge of the opposite skill sets, and third is for the process and the businesses and process and management part. So if you could bring all these three people on the table and make a very successful group for that, then you could be successful. And for that you have to learn a lot first. by emailing the business people, they will not come towards to you. So you have to go first towards them. You have to learn the skills by taking this. For example, for me, just like I applied for the crisp innovation fellowship at the University of Oxford, and successfully I got. And when I was very confused at that time about being as a professor, how can I start these startup companies or spin out companies, so that trainings helps me a lot in my leadership skills. And next 10-year path has been completely cleared. So I suggest each and everyone to be proactive and take the different trainings which are available in our ecosystem. Then only you can learn so many of the different skills things that will be useful for your spinouts.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks very much, Sophia. And then we've got a question about kind of partnership. And I think I'll go to, I'll maybe go to Junction first and then come to Kelly on this one. How do you, what are the important factors when you're choosing academic or industrial partners to help with a commercialization project? What are the things to look for?
Yeah, so I can, for partnership, as I mentioned in my last slide, talk a little bit already. Basically, you're looking for partners. First is the expertise you don't have. This is very important. Of course, internally, you do need to have people understand what are you looking for, because in many cases, internally, you don't have resources, or at least one or two people to understand what are you looking for. So you know what kind of expertise or partner you're looking for to serve your purpose. For example, you're looking for a chemical manufacturing organization to, or development and manufacturing to develop your manufacturing process. You need to really look into those people. Is this company have the expertise you need it for your molecule? And the second is this company really good at serve people? Because for those organizations, any organizations successful in the CMO organizations, the service mindset is very important. Take your success at the top priority as their success. Basically, when I was working on the other side, the CDMO side, we say we don't success unless the innovative company success. So that mindset is very important, but often ignored by many organizations, as I've seen, and when I was on this side, that side of the business. And also, the partner has to be very open. You're looking for and communicate well with you, and be really willing to expose what they say you don't know. And at the same time, disclose the bad news. So many organizations still today, I see they don't want to say, oh, we made a mistake in the manufacturing. I possibly ruined one portion of your product. Let's hide it. You don't want that. You want to say, the first thing's within 24 hours, which have time available, pick up the phone, talk to you. So you want those kind of really people to be open to you, and they have your really business in their mind. And I think that's really important. And say bad news, you really want to share first. Good news, you can keep about a week, no problem.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
thanks
that's a
very much.
few things I just want to share a little bit.
Yeah, perfect. Kelly, have you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, just to add to that, not hiding the bad news, but something else. I would say, firstly, I think this is something I touched on in my brief remarks, is that actually at the end of the day, it's about the business. Now, when I say this, it's whatever partnership that you seek or you enter into, it must be mutually beneficial. They must be in it for everybody. I think that to expect someone to look at how sexy your science is, I think is, we don't understand, we don't articulate the business case of what we do. So firstly, it's about the business. What's in it for everybody? Secondly, for a partner, the project defines where I need to go. So where do I need to go? I look at what I can offer that is available, and because I understand what the project needs at the level of infrastructure, at the level of technologies, and at the level of talent. So then when I go to the partner, I'm going to go to a partner that will provide complementary expertise or know-how at those three levels. And so when we have these, kind of common centers of excellence, then we do that. But secondly, it doesn't end there. The science is cool, but when you start growing the team, I realized this. When we started growing the center, we reached 50 people, then 60 people to realize, oh my goodness me, you need project management, you need business development. It's no longer about the science. The science is probably the easy part, but it's managing all of this together. So those kind of partnerships, which are mutually beneficial and are based on really looking at what is complementary that the other partner can bring to the table, are the kinds of things that I look for. We look for that when we know what we don't know, and we go and find who can help us.
Okay, thanks very much, Kelly. So I'm just conscious that we're running over time a little bit. I think we can carry on for a few minutes more, but maybe just a couple more questions. So I'm going to come to Sophia and Kylie. We had.
Can I add in this?
Oh, sorry. Yes, Sophia,
Yes.
please, just very quickly, if you can.
So I have solved this problem by one way, by like taking the good business partner, because in taking the business partner on board any person of outside, the trust is very, very important thing. So in my opinion, if I met any person and I develop a trust, the only thing when I started working them, then only I can develop a trust with him or her. So the idea is behind it that I took him or her as a consultant in my company, and I worked with them with 2 years. Like if everything goes well, then I worked on the equity and all on the business partner and all kind of things. So in this manner, like the sequential approach is very, very essential for taking the another partner in your company. So you can check the other skill sets, as well as there is a good enough time to build the trust among the two partners. That's very, very essential part.
It's almost a try before you buy kind of approach. Have a sort of trial period to make sure everything's going to fit together. And I guess that's important from both sides. Make sure everyone has to work together. You don't want to be too tied in. Brilliant. Okay, so
it's a
we've got,
two-way process and a win-win situation.
Yeah, I think we've got time for two more little topics. Kylie, you were talking about supporting women entrepreneurs, and Sophia as well. Was there any support that you got that was particularly useful to you in your career? And I'll ask you to be as brief as you can.
I think if I start, I think the thing for me that was really useful was a entrepreneurship training course that I went on back in my postdoc years, that was aimed at sort of testing out whether if you gave entrepreneurship training to women, whether you ended up with more women on boards eventually. And I think one of the lessons there is that it's a very long, sort of a long shot to do this, because that was sort of 10, 12, whatever years ago in my case. And finally now we have a technology that we've been able to take to market, and I'm on the board of that company. But I think it's that long-term investment in providing the training so that you have the skills to know what to do to kind of jump on an innovation when you actually find it in your research, so that you can't expect quick gains from sort of training women in particular skills. It's going to be, or anybody really, it's going to be, you have to sort of put that long-term investment in, that you're building up an entrepreneurial culture that is going to change people's mindset eventually.
Brilliant. And the same question to Sophia. Anything that was especially valuable for you?
Yeah, so in my whole journey, if I inspire the women scientists to become an entrepreneur, and I could solve the problems at every stages of their life, from the conception of the research, carry forward the research, then their postdoctoral journey, that would be very great for experience for me. I'm the part of different women scientist schemes and all kind of things. So whatever the problems faced by the women, if you could bring the good policies at your universities or in the nation, that would be a very great thing, and it gives a lot of satisfaction to me. And in my own enterprise, like if I am giving the employment for the postdoc students, that's the personal satisfaction to me. So in this manner, I got the satisfaction, and I'm nurturing the woman scientist.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much. Okay, so I've got one final question to finish off, and this is going to be to everybody, and I'm going to be really strict, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds each. So looking back on your career, what single piece of advice would you offer to an early career chemist thinking about commercializing their research? So let's go in the order that we did the presentation. So Kelly first.
Take a sabbatical when you've determined what you don't know about commercialization. I went to Pfizer on sabbatical when I wanted to do drug discovery.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Kelly. And Kylie? Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
So in
Sophia.
my opinion, for yeah. So for early researchers, I would like to give one advice. Try to identify the real pain point of the society. Identify the nature, and the solution is there also. So is there is an real need or not? If you are working on the wrong need, then will collapse you to the wrong path. So the first path and first step is very, very crucial to identify the true problem, which is the
Brilliant.
customer
Okay.
pain point, actually, I can say.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sophia. And now Kylie.
Yeah, I think this relates a bit to what Kelly and Sophia have said, but I think conversations with people all across academia and industry, particularly in industry, just to find out what the needs are and make sure that you're really filling a real need that's there.
Brilliant. Okay, and Jung-Sin, you've got the hardest going last.
Okay, so I think for young career, one thing I would say, be prepared, and you cannot plan your career. Be prepared, like Kaidi was saying, took some courses during the postdoc time, and I'm not sure whether she really thought she would start up a business, but at least prepared, get your knowledge, and then when the opportunity come, you have potential to commercializing some things or start up a company and so on, really have a purpose. The purpose is very important. You don't just start a business for the sake of business, and focus on science, because if you come from scientific side, focus on science, learn other things you don't know on the business side, and focus on the well-being, and the profit is what come. So if you focus on profit first, things is wrong. That's what I'm thinking along the way for your business and also for your career.
Brilliant. Okay, I think that's a really nice note to end on there. Thank you again to all of our speakers. I think we've had some really rich discussion. There were several more questions that we could have gone on to, and I'm really sorry that we didn't quite manage to get through to those, but hopefully, we've given people plenty to think about in this kind of area, and perhaps inspired some future entrepreneurs who we'll see coming through the system. So I'd just like to thank all of our speakers one more time, and to thank Commonwealth Chemistry for bringing together such a fantastic panel to run this webinar. As I said, this is the second webinar that we've hosted in partnership with Commonwealth Chemistry. The first one covered another important topic, which we've kind of hinted at in the discussions today, the idea of addressing gender parity within science, and again in business, it's a problem that has a whole sort of structural aspect to it, and it's not one that's going away very quickly. If you'd like to check out that webinar, it's available on demand on the Chemistry World website. We're just sending out the link now to everyone in the chat. And if you'd like to know more about what Commonwealth Chemistry is doing to support the chemical sciences community throughout the Commonwealth, then do head to www.commonwealthchemistry.org for some more details. Thank all of you for attending this webinar. It's been fantastic. We've had some really great engagement from you as the audience. I hope that you have got what you need from it and been inspired. You will get an email with a link to the recording and to a certificate of attendance in the next few days. And if you liked this Chemistry World webinar, then do check out chemistryworld.com/webinars to see all the other topics that we've got coming up soon. And I hope to see you in another webinar very shortly. Thanks very much. I'm Philip Broadwith, Chemistry World's business editor, and we'll see you again soon.